here. Hello, everybody. Michael McGinnis here with the Ripple Effect. Hey, it's me and Tom, half the band, right? So here's that's right. Others are busy. Can you imagine that? What's that all about?
Hey, what did that say about us, right? And we're just slouching off today, or what?
Yes, isn't
I've got
that...
nothing better to do.
Oh, I thought that's what we were supposed to do. Yeah. In fact, who is going to pay my bills this month? So this is great.
Okay.
So anyways, we're going to just start off. We've got a few impromptu topics, and I think the conversation is what's awesome. And, the hope is that through the conversation, others pick it up and basically just hear that this is the kind of thoughts that people have as they're on this spiritual path or enlightenment or whatever you want to refer to this aspect of our life. And hopefully over time to be able to join in this. That was fortunate part that Tom and I and many others had early in, I know for me, it was in my early 30s when there was this spiritual group. And sometimes we'll just have to talk about that too. It was so awesome. It was just a group of people that all had in common the interest of the spiritual quest, understanding things about life. And here was this group that just provided this conversation, connections and conferences and trips. Oh, what an awesome time that was. But we'll start here with Tom. He's just going to sort of venture into spiritual laws. I think that's a great topic.
Oh, man.
To start off with, yes.
Law and order, spiritual law and order.
I got stopped. Yeah, did I? I got stopped and arrested. For karmic law. So yes, and I was told to do 10 Hail Marys. I'm not sure if that'll help, but we'll see.
Man. Yeah, we were improvising. When you've got half a band, that's what you end up doing is improvising a lot to fill in for the missing parts. But law, we got into that by talking about how people view healing and about how they view what happens if you're a good person or if you are spiritual with a certain dogma, that you'll be safe. And many people, I think this is part of the COVID circumstance that we're involved in. A lot of people think they're protected because of their spirituality. And somehow they're better than somebody else, or they're safer or whatever, just because of that. And then you saw so many churches where the virus went like rampant because the people, well, we're going to church, this is God's house and nothing can happen to us. And then half the congregation, including the pastor and whoever else, got the virus. So there's, this is a topic that I think that I have thought about and maybe had conversations with over a cup of tea, over the years, with, do good people, what happens to good people? Good people get sick, good people have, there's no guarantee just because you're a good person that good things are going to happen to you or whatever, that kind of topic. But on the other hand, there certainly seem to be times when grace has entered in, and I can point to certain circumstances where I felt like I had been lifted out of a circumstance or coaxed into a circumstance or nudged into a circumstance where there was grace and there was healing and something happened that for whatever reason, and I don't know if it's, I can't judge that to say, well, I'm better than this because I had this happen. That makes me special, somehow or another. So what is specialness when it comes to spirituality? Is it, just because you believe a certain things that make you special? These are topics that I think that we grapple with. And I know we had a conversation last week with Kara, my daughter, where she was at a point in her life where she didn't have a defined belief system. And that the challenge is just to be who you are and to do your job and to take care of your children and to, to chop the wood and carry the water and all those kind of things, just to do your work. And that there's something special about doing a good job, and so maybe if a person is genuinely not, let's just say, egotistically doing good works or doing it for the sake of, oh, aren't I special? Just doing good works, I think, has an effect, and that is a ripple effect. If you do something kind for somebody, it does have a ripple effect. If you help somebody, there is a ripple effect. But if you do it for the sake of some kind of benefit, or adding coin to your afterlife, I'm adding up some karma here, I've got a stack this big now. And well, am I going to have a big house when I get there? There's something about that just doesn't resonate with true giving and true love and unconditional love. I think unconditional love is not just you do something unconditionally to help somebody, but there's no condition to your offering your love. I mean, it's not, you're doing it for some reason or another. Um, it's not just that you do it in spite of how bad somebody else is. I don't know, I'm not going to help that person. Boy, they have been so mean to me over the years. You help them anyway because that's what you do. And so it becomes a part of your lifestyle to be helpful, and hopefully that carries over into other things. So anyway, that's a kickoff there.
That's good. It's an interesting topic because there's all of these what I consider intellectual fodder. That often. I mean, that's who we are. We've got this thing in here in the brain, and we enjoy that part. And I think of how earlier on, how as I was grasping, there were these things of structure that were very helpful to me to hear, like karma law. Karma is a topic, or a karmic law, however. And it's interesting because, like you, over time, it became less and less about these laws and pieces. Because for me, wow, and again, I'm just me, right? And we could die and all of a sudden find out, I had all of these tickets issued here because I violated karmic principle 12 and 15 and 21. And, who knows what happens. But, in general, based on all of the experiences and things and how I've sort of concluded things, it's evolved from structure to more of simplicity. And I think as I look back, the history of religion has all really been about dogma, ritual, right? Things that are there, laws, the 10 Commandments. Here's Jeff coming in, the 10 Commandments, and, things that were really important to be able to do and follow. Hey, Jeff, how are you?
Good. How are you?
Good,
How are you?
thank you.
How are you?
Doing great. Good. Yeah, as usual coming in. We're on the roll. Thanks for joining. So you'll be able to just jump right in and quickly just.
And
Hey,
here's
Rachel.
Hey.
We needed a fourth wheel.
Yes.
I was getting
Equilibrium.
concerned.
I feel it.
Rachel.
So, yeah.
That's Mike.
Hi,
Mike,
Mike.
that's Rachel.
Hey, Rachel. Great to
Mike.
see you. Yes.
Oh, wow. Interesting background.
Yes. Consciousness. And I'll come back to that. But anyways, here's how it sort of unfolded is Tom and I started before we hit the record button. We realized, hey, we got a few topics. Tom has a couple of topics, and we just happened to be talking about spiritual laws and things sort of as a follow-up to our conversation with Kara last week. And so Tom just sort of debuted that. I'm just sharing my thoughts on it. So you'll quickly get the grasp of it, chime in, and then Tom's going to jump into a topic that had from the Tom Sawyer series that we've been doing, and we'll go from there. Sound good?
Yeah.
Awesome. So yeah, and so Tom was sort of just talking about the evolution, spirituality has gone from more this structure to belief systems, to this belief that I'm entitled, or a judgmental view is if I do this, I'll get this. And I really followed suit with that. I'd say this is the more I've developed in here, right or wrong, and again, who knows, are going to be right or wrong, but the more I have gone really from a set of like principles to really a simplistic view of spirituality. And as I look back, I look for that kind of structure, right? This was something new. And after all, religion is and has been dogma. It's about, I grew up the 10 Commandments. It gave these certain things to do. You followed them, you got into heaven. You didn't, you went to hell. And, and so those were sort of how we tend to operate and having this thing called a brain. We look to intellectualize these kinds of things to make sense of them. And spirituality over time started to make less sense and had more questions to it, to really just evolve to me is the simplicity of love. That if we just focus on this, and rather than a principle like karma, to me was a great example of something that what goes around comes around. Well, I've seen that as a real truism in physical reality, right? And you do something good or you do something bad to others, it's likely you get that back. Sort of how that's evolved to me is that we are all energy. And that's just a matter of we attract into our life, what we are. And that's maybe a sort of a evolution of the karmic principle, but just simply that we're energy, and love is an energy that when we go out there with love, it produces the nature of our show here, the ripple effect of helping others. And many of those with near-death experiences tend to come back with an experience supportive of that, realizing that, as Tom Sawyer shared in his, I said to this plant, I really love this plant. I love the colors of this plant. And during his near-death experience, he had the chance from the plant perspective to feel the impact of that loving thought and realize the implications that it had on the physical and cellular level of that plant. And tests today, research like the water, saying good things to water, it keeps it clean water, bad things to water produces a dirty water. Those kind of things are all sort of characteristic of that view. And so I've sort of simplified it, spirituality to me, rather than be a set of do's and don'ts, to just realize is that, for me, it's here. It's about life. It's being a human being, or that spiritual being having a human experience. It's the realization that there is meaning to life. And anything I do beyond that is really an attempt to intellectualize it. Well, is there karma? What happens next? How do we do that? Well, again, I'm going to try to do it within the context of my brain. And even Bruce Grayson, who I'll come back to here in a little bit with his new book, I'd mentioned to her at one point, is that, that everything, all the things that he's discovered, he realized that he's limited. He's extremely handicapped because he has the context of this framework, this brain, this ego, this intellect, and everything that we have to attempt to try to process things that he is now believes are much greater than this. And that's my simple view is it's greater. And the good news for me is there is a transition. And the overall belief is that love is something that I enjoy much more so being than an AH or a bad guy, and which, still comes out at times. I'm still a human being, but it just is met with much better consequences in my life being love than it is being bad. And so that's sort of my simplistic principles. I'll leave it as that. Jeff, Rachel?
For me, spirituality, I think, becomes, unless we experience it, it becomes a purely dogmatic discussion. And history has proven that when the people such as Jesus or the Buddha, pick one, when they had a mystical experience of the divine consciousness, use that word, and they realized how to live from that space, which was love. And the more the people around them, as the years spread out, stopped having that experience, the methodology that the Buddha talked about, that Jesus talked about, which is pretty clear, actually, it's not hidden, became this straitjacket that people had to put on. And as a result, they even further limited themselves from having the experience. It's the experience that's the core. And the experience sets you free. It sets you free from a dogma. It sets you free from the teacher. Jesus, I've just been reading some stuff. Jesus was like, and ye shall do greater works than I. That's a heavy statement. I mean, think about that. Ye shall do greater works than I. Whoa. That gives me goosebumps. His point was clear. Have the experience. Here, do it. And you will be greater than I. I mean, the Buddha said the same thing. It's just like, here it is. Experience it. And you will not even need me anymore. You will be the next Buddha. So it's the experience that, for me, is the root, which is one reason I liked and have cherished the priesthood experience, because it was experiential. When Dan did his thing, that was an experience. I mean, I was on my knees. I went back to that hotel room and I was on my knees. I was like, oh my God, love was everything I could possibly see and be. It was, it was intense, beautifully intense, and the idea, the priesthood at that point was all about that. It was all about the experience, all the conferences, the places that people went to, it was the experience, because once you have that, it's yours and you're free.
Jeff, I really like that, because that is powerfully simple and profound, because it really was. I think back, my viewpoints are the culmination of just all my experiences, which helped to formulate that conclusion that there was meaning. I like that. That's a great way. It's not the dogma. It's not that straitjacket or ritual on there. But Rachel, so help set us free here. What's the truth?
I don't have anything to say right now.
She says,
Okay.
Silence is the truth. That's Mayor Baba, he wrote a book called God Speaks. And in the book, he said that he had said everything that he needed to say already. And this was a book for the convulsions of the mind. So the book was this thick, and it had, like tons and tons and tons and tons of information in it. And it was probably a cosmic joke on his part that, hey, if you want the truth, here it is. Tons of information for your mind, because your mind is going crazy and you want to have all this information. Here it is. But he stopped talking and he had a little board with him, a chalkboard kind of a thing, and he had developed his own sign language, or his own language in a sense. But he spent most of the rest of his life just going around in silence and being with people and hugging people and doing just taking light wherever he went. And he would sit like Mother Mira. Mother Mira doesn't teach per se, although she has in the last couple of years. I have tuned in to her, and she has some questions and answers, but they're very, very simple, and it almost always comes back to whatever you like. Do what that's fine, or that's good. Just, yeah, do that. If you feel that's good, do that. That's good for you. So it's very simple. Um, so it's not very complex in that way.
That's interesting. I thought for you guys is Jeff, you referenced, the experience of it. And I don't know if you'd be each interested in sort of joining maybe, one or two of your experiences. So to have, what does that mean to have an experience on that too? And I can start with one of them, and then you guys can maybe join in with one too. I think that would be helpful, educational, just, what does that mean? Because it was a collective. And as I talk to people about my beliefs, and I do talks and workshops, and one of the things when I do the talk on, what is my belief, and well, how would I describe meaning of life and everything, I put it as just simply that there's meaning, and it's a collective of experiences, and there's 1,000 probably plus of these little nugget experiences that if I just shared just one, you probably all have some kind of, oh, that's just made up, or reason to be able to object to it, as I did. But then after time, when I just became more aware and was thinking this way as I was opening my mind towards a greater thing called spirituality, I just had more of these experiences. And one you'd mentioned being with a group was while I was in Sedona, Arizona, and it was described to be this pocket of a lot of vortexes and things that way. And to me, again, coming from the business world, I was accustomed to sort of just doubt in the beginning, which is good. Doubters make the best believers, I found. And okay, what's a vortex? Okay, where is it? I'm standing here. Where is this vortex kind of thing? But as I started to get more involved in it, I started to open myself more to the experiences. And there was this one case of which we were just on some side of one of the mountains there, beautiful day. And he said, this is a great time to let's all just sort of lay back wherever you are, and we'll just do meditation. And so I'd done a bunch of those, and my mind was, as I now look back, was always active and never really opened up. But this time somehow was different. And a quick backdrop is that, one of the real factors that was really pushing me towards this whole spiritual search at this point in my life, my early 30s, was going through a divorce. And for me, it was really transformational based on my past and issues, very needy kind of person, low self-esteem. So the fact that, my wife then 7 years wanted to leave me was devastating. It just was. And so as I worked through therapy and counseling and then found this group, really one of my objectives was really being able to get past these things and this pain and the depression and things that I had. Well, again, being as a backdrop, that'll now make sense as I share the experience, because we're just laying on a rock. And again, I've never really had these things. I sort of just paid attention, enjoyed the restful period of time. But this time again was different. And so I forgot whatever was going on. Next thing you know is that here I was laying on this rock, and I felt myself just go in, and whatever that meant. It was like I was just falling, free falling, yet I could feel myself still on the rock. And it was a weird feeling that was there. I never had experienced anything like this before. And so just having the awareness of the fact that this was something, I just allowed it to go. And so I did, all of a sudden, I just ended up in this big sort of just cave that was deep, wherever it was in there. And I was flying. I really was flying, just flying around this sort of cave. If you've ever been down in a deep cave, just all these walls, the stalagmites and the stalactites and all these things were around. And it was just this incredible, cool thing. And yet I knew I was still laying on the ground, but I was just immersed in this experience. And while I was doing that, there was this light, and that's all I would describe it as, sort of a light. And I recognized the light, I don't know how, I just did. And so I flew over to this light, and the closer I got, I got there and I realized that that was my ex-wife. And there she was, just in this, best I could describe, sort of angelic kind of a figure. And I just stopped there and immersed. I was just so amazed at her beauty. And I was just still, I was just watching her. And she said to me the words I can remember as if I was still right there. I says, Mike, don't you see? I needed to let you go so that you could learn to fly. And
Wow.
so freaking profound. And I just remember I was in tears. Tears is whatever. And so that in that cavern, whatever it was, there was another hole that opened up, and there was this even more present light that was there. And so, okay, I just felt to go there, this elation experience kind of a thing. And I went in there. Now, again, backdrop is that grew up Catholic, sort of pushed that all aside. A lot of negative experiences in there. What was that? A recovering Catholic, I think they called them in those days. But in any cases, obviously, primary view of them being a Christian faith is figures like Jesus, Mary, so on and so forth. So, I accepted those. But anyways, I say that because I flew into this hole that was where this light was. And here was this presence, and it was just this classic figure of Jesus standing there, and it was one of those you'd see with this heart image, everything I had recognized from, again, my religious background, but it was just this smile at me, smile. And the next thing you know was from his heart center came this light, and it just hit me. And I just remember this jolt. Immediately, I was back on the ground outside of this experience where I was in the physical laying on top. And the person who was next to me said, Mike, you okay? You okay? And when that thing had happened, apparently I had like what they were witnessing as they described it as sort of like an epileptic fit. I was like scrambling the arms, whatever, going around and I came out of it, and I was in tears. I'd known exactly what has happened, but it was years before I ever said anything about that. And that was this major turning point in my life, is because it was an experience. It was my own. Nobody, it doesn't matter what anybody else says. I know that experience. And the fact that it went for my purpose of being there, of trying to deal with the divorce and getting past it, and just seeing now my ex, who there was so much anger for and all of these things because of the divorce, blah, 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 to being just such love. And then to have had this dose, that's what really triggered my spiritual search, frankly. At that point, I was a believer, and that's all I would say. So anyways, that's mine. Love to hear you guys.
Yeah, that's really a powerful image. I mean, I fully think that was a spiritual awakening for you. And I know Tom Sawyer talked about you don't have to have a near-death experience to have a profound experience, to have an opening. Some people they have to go through such a profound change of consciousness, like a near-death experience, and come back with information. But it can be done, a spiritual awakening can happen over time with a series of those experiences. And that those experiences are softer, obviously, than dying. You don't have to have a death to have those kinds of levels of experience. So that sounds to me, it's like some of the experiences that I've had where I have, in a sense, been out of my body, which is what that feeling of being jolted when you came back, the epileptic fit. I mean, that sounded to me like you were coming back into your body. You were literally out of your body, and in a larger realm or a more extended realm or a more profound level of consciousness than just your mind, just your thoughts. You know, that you were out of your mind, you would say.
Yeah.
And that's what insanity can be for some people. They feel like they're insane, when they're having these spiritual experiences. They can't, they have a hard time relating to what's going on around them when they come back from that, because their whole outlook is changed. And that's what happens in a near-death experience as well. You come back to a different set of circumstances. I mean, sometimes people divorce from their wives, or they, make profound changes in their life course and so forth. Um, so that kind of profound spiritual experience is very real, and as profound as a near-death experience. And so
Tom, I did share it with Tom Sawyer, and it was like I was listening to Tom Sawyer there. His words were very much yours. Do you mind sharing one of your own? You said you were out of body kind of thing.
Well, I've had, gosh, so many of those kinds of things. But one thing that related to what Jeff was talking about, when I was in Myrtle Beach, I had a lot of these kinds of experiences. A couple of those was one time when I was, and I don't know if I mentioned this in my previous talk or not, but the fishing line on the pier, did I mention that?
Mm.
You talked about one early on in it. It doesn't matter. Repeat it anyways.
Okay, well, that one was, and I think I may have mentioned this one, where I was on the pier and I had this sense of it's like a dream, but it's not a dream because you're awake and you're walking around, you know. So it's not like going to bed and having a dream, but a kind of experience while you're in a situation. Um, like what you said. I mean, you didn't go asleep. You were laying on the rock, and all of a sudden you went into this other state, in absorbed into the rock. Um, so some of these kinds of things would happen where I would be someplace, and then I would feel myself going into a thought process that would evolve into more of an experience, not so much of me being there as what was actually happening, as to another reality in a sense. I mean, I don't know what else to call it. It's just another aspect of that place. Um, Around the beach. The beach became a really significant pull for me. It's like I became one with the ocean, somehow. And so a series of these things developed out of why I bring this up. The fishing thing was I was on the pier and people were fishing, and then had this experience of being tangled up. You know how when people throw their rod back and they throw it out like that, what happens back behind you? You don't see that, So it's like, and if you happen to get behind one of those people, you could get your shirt, hooked onto that thing and get thrown off into the water. So I had this experience of all of these people doing this, and all of a sudden I was being caught up with all of these different lines and hooks and lines and everything. And it was like, oh, how do I get out of this, And the experience was somehow I came out of that. And I said, well, that's it. Just wake up, just change your reality. Just see it differently. And then that entanglement that you have goes away. And then we do that with our mind a lot of times. We'll get entangled in a thought form or a worry or a circumstance where we don't know what to do. And we get down and down and down about it. And it's just, wait a minute, this isn't really what's important. This whatever the situation is not me. This is just a worry. It's something I'm thinking about. And so wake up from that. I had an experience also standing on the edge of the water. And you mentioned this earlier about water and land. I was standing at the edge of the water, and for some reason or another, that became a really significant place to be because I was at the edge of the water. I was at the edge of the land, and the sky was above me. So all of the elements were coming together at the edge of the water, at this edge of the ocean. And I realized that I am um, nature having become conscious of itself, and that's what we are. We have evolved to the point now where we are nature. We are made up of all the elements of nature, and that nature has evolved to a point of now becoming conscious through us. And that doesn't make us special. It just makes us nature. It just makes a level of nature having been conscious of itself. And the whole variety of circumstances, all of us come from a different perspective, um, in a similar way that when we start collecting our stories and when we start sharing with each other, we find out, wow, I've had that experience, or I've had something like it, or, I can relate to it because it awakens something of truth within me. When you've talked about that experience of going into the rock, I had an experience with a tree like that one time where I merged with the tree. And I learned a whole lot of stuff from that, a whole bunch of exercises that I used to, when I did these in search of programs that Jeff and I have done over the years. A lot of these ceremonies, and ceremonies for me are a way of enacting experiences, or to setting the stage for having some kind of active experience, um, so that you can have an idea and then act on that idea through a set of activities that draw you into uh, experiencing the thing you're trying to talk about. Um, there was a dream that I had that Jeff was talking about, the experience thing, and I'll share this, and then maybe Rachel will have found her voice by then. Um, this dream was, I was on the edge of like a cliff, and I was on this side of the cliff, and there was this big, huge, like, um, I suppose there was water at the bottom, but it was so deep you couldn't see it. But it felt like it was further than you could walk across or jump across. It was a brick, and so I was thinking, well, how do I get to the other side? Because on the other side, it seemed like there was something there for me that I wanted to get to. And I didn't know what it was, but I knew I wanted to get to the other side. So I was thinking and thinking and thinking again, just same kind of concept of thinking really hard. How do I get over there? And I decided to just sit down and not worry about it, that maybe I'll get there somehow. And when I did that, a bridge appeared that I could walk across. And so I walked across the bridge, and on the other side, there was this automobile with a license plate. And the license plate stood out to me for some reason. It was like double digits and double numbers, um, like a 22 and a 44, or two A's and two B's or something like that. And somehow that was supposed to be significant, that these double digit things. Um, and then I went on to further on this journey, and I started having all these experiences of like fulfillment or being happy. Like, well, I've gotten there. I don't know what it is, but it feels really good here, and I'm happy, and it's full of light, and this is fun. And then I came upon this person reading the book, and she was turning the pages, reading and reading and studying and studying the book and studying the book. And when I got up to the person to look closer, the title of the book was "The Experience That I Had Just Had." And for lack of a way to put it, I mean, it didn't have, it was so complex that you wouldn't be able to write out, but it was the experience that I just had. And so I shook up her. I said, you can't just read about it. You have to experience it. And, you know, and so it was, the book was the experience. And so that's, and I came out of that at that point, and with this idea of, oh, I need to tell people about this, I need to share that. So it dovetails right just to what Jeff, you were saying about the experience, is the truth. The truth comes from the experience of doing whatever, or having and that leads me to this. Jeff, you probably remember this.
I do, now that you hold that up.
Now, do you still have one of these? Do you still have?
Maybe in a box.
This was related to Tom Sawyer. I don't remember. It was in 2007 when he did this. And he was already at that point starting to talk about his impending transition to dying and re-dying, I guess you'd say, dying again. He died 2 or 3 times, I think, or could have. So he sent this out to a bunch of us, and it's called the Warmest Hug, and it was a kit. And inside the kit was a pair of gloves, these little brown gloves that you can buy at the hardware store. A warming, these little warming pocket things you put in your pocket. They're like heat up your pocket. You put your hands in there. And a set of instructions on how to hug. And so he called it the Warmest Hug. And so he felt like that the really, really important thing to be able to do for other people was to simply give them a hug. But it was a spiritual hug as much as it was, a literal hug. It was symbolic, more of a spiritual hug. So the instructions, and I looked for the paper, I don't know where that is anymore, but it was very simple instructions, how to hug somebody in a spiritual hug, and how to embrace the person. And this was really important to him. He did a number of these and put them in an envelope and mailed them out to a group of us I think Richard, the healing group that Jeff, you're probably still part of this, the healing Tuesday and Sunday healing group.
I mean, I was aware of it. I didn't participate much. I don't think.
Okay. Well, there's an ad hoc group of people who Tom had started this years ago. He had a group of people that knew kind of what was he could go to say, I'm working on this. This is something I would like for you to think about and to put your energy into. So it was a kind of a support network of prayer, like a prayer group. And so it didn't have to be a specific prayer issue or whatever, but it was like, just the idea of praying for whatever. But this was sent out to that group and others, I'm sure. And the thing about it was to have people to just share that love in a more conscious or more physical way, I guess you could say, and not just thinking about prayer, an more active prayer. And he also gave, years ago to visit Tom, and he gave me a pair of these. These are booties that Elaine had made. And for whatever reason, this became really important for me. Not so much as a pair of booties to keep my feet warm, but the in the same kind of context as something that you can hold on to. And I think about Tom and Elaine, when I have the one that's left, or the other one I think got lost in the laundry sometime or another. I used to hug this thing. If I was going through a hard time, I would just take this and just kind of hug it like this. So it became a kind of a symbol for me of him, something I could hold on to, and think about the warmth of, and it's a huggy, it's a huggy, warm, keeps your feet warm. It's very practical kind of a thing. So those kind of experiences and I had one more hugging experience after Isa died. We had a ceremony here on the mound up behind the house here, and a friend of mine came who was a musician from South Carolina, along with a couple of other friends of mine. And it was right here where I'm sitting right now, through that door. He came in and hugged me. He didn't say a word, but I can still feel that hug today, the way that he hugged me, because I could tell that he genuinely embraced my pain and all that I was going through. He embraced that to the point where I think that it was the hug that you would want to get from anyone. That if you were feeling grieved or you were feeling pain like that, it was a very profound thing. So anyway, that's the story of my experiences with some of those things. And Mike and I had talked earlier about, because I had thought about this warmest hug thing as a topic for our time together. And then remembered that I had this upstairs in my little meditation space that I actually keep up there. And sometimes if I want to hug Tom, I'll just take this thing and hold it like that. So these little symbols that we have sometimes and I think that's what spiritual symbology, like crosses and amulets and all the little paraphernalia things that we have sometimes that we use for purposes of remembering or honoring or whatever. Those things, we don't worship those things. I don't worship this booty, but it's a symbol or something physical to hold on to that reminds me of some experience like that. So I think these experiences, I don't know, did you get you a rock, Mike, after you had that experience to help you remember that?
No, Tom gave me his boxers, so I've been holding them.
I think though it's been interesting to listen to what you all have said. And I think you're right, Tom. I think that you can have, there sometimes can be an object that can embody that energy. I mean, one of the things that I've found, to be true for me as I've been practicing, I've always been very active. Meditation was very difficult for me because I found it hard to be still in my body and in my mind. But when I started doing dances of universal peace, I found that I could remember, because I was singing and dancing, and having these feelings and experiences of love or of peace or of unity or of joy, that I could, I found that I could have that experience at the dance, but then I could remember the song, I could remember the movements. And I found that because I was still singing it, or because I could make those movements, I could recall that feeling. And I could recall the message that the message that came with it. And that was really important. And I think it's similar with like intoning mantras and doing kirtan. It's like we're actually, well, for me anyway, I'll just say for me, what I realize is that because I'm using my body, and that does also include my mind, like, because like I also realized that I was memorizing mantras. I was, memorizing the lyrics of a song, so that was an active engagement of my, my created form, that I could, I would was doing these activities and I was experiencing states of joy or whatever, love, peace. And that because I had engaged my physical form, I found it was easier for me to return to those states of being, those states of consciousness. And so I think you're right. You could, sometimes that happens you can imbue a symbol, and I think you're right about ceremony. It's like, it's a container for us to have, we are creating a container to have an experience of the sacred. However, it's an experience of the sacred, and the experiences of the elements of the ritual are intended to help us to get to that place. They're not in and of themselves the things that, it's there to create a container for our experience. And so, so that really resonates for me. Yes, that our sacred ceremony can help us do that. The other thing that occurred to me while we were talking, while I was listening to both of your stories, was that you both had these experiences in a physical location. I mean, I also went to Sedona. I went to Sedona because I wanted to see red rocks. That's why I was compelled to go to Sedona by a picture. And when I got there, somebody started talking to me about vortexes, and I was like, right, vortexes. Sure. Got it, man. Okay. But it didn't prevent me from, I hiked, right? And I had these really interesting happenstance experiences of the vortexes. I was not seeking the vortexes. These, I hiked like 4 miles, and I was asking for a ride home because it had gotten dark. And these women were like, well, we're going to meditate on Bell Rock. And I was like, okay. So I got up on Bell Rock while I was waiting for them to do their meditation. And I felt something, and I went to the airport vortex and was just kind of walking around. The dude was like, don't go to the place where everybody else is. There's a little place over here. It's the real place. And I felt hugely expansive. I all of a sudden felt like I was like air, I felt floating and expansive. And it was like, whoa, what was that? I wasn't like, I definitely wasn't seeking it. I was totally taken off guard by it. But it was like, wow, I don't know what that was, but whoa, it was something. It was something real happened there. And, and so I think that there are also these, it's like these heyows, there's a song that it talks about heyows, and a heyow is a sacred place. And there are places like that, where you lay down on the rock, and Tom, for you, the heyow was there at the ocean. And it's like, these are places where I don't know why, but it's like the energy is amazing. It's an amazing sacred place. And Jeff and Benjamin and I went for a walk today, and we hiked down to this confluence of these two places. And there was a place there, but I was like, whoa, this is one of those places. This is a sacred place. It was just all of a sudden, very deep and very profound, and it was like, whoa, this would be, this is just an amazing and beautiful place. And it's like, it helps you to drop into that place of stillness and experience the oneness. And, so I just wanted to offer that because it was just like so beautiful. And it was something that, you both talked about, is like this, where these places were powerful places that helped us to have an experience.
We went to the Indian Valley Convergence.
That was beautiful. That was excellent.
I'm sorry, the confluence, the Indian Valley Confluence.
All right, well, Jeff, now it's your turn. Now you've got the opportunity here to just put us all to shame and come out with really what an experience should look like.
There is, see, that's it. There is no model. There is no model.
That's good.
And, we do ourselves a disservice. It's like, oh, I'll sit and I'll think about a deity, I'll think about Jesus, I'll think about Krishna, I'll think about, Lakshmi. And I'm going, I gotta have a vision of Lakshmi. And well, maybe you will, but at some point you'll probably realize that that's not what Lakshmi looks like. Lakshmi doesn't look like those pictures. That's a representation so that our minds have something to hook onto and open the door. And that's really all it is, and on that level, you can pick one. I've been blessed to have, I think, enough spiritual, deep experiences to keep me going. There were experiences even before the priesthood initiation, the ordination, and that was profound. I entered a space of love that lasted for a very long time. And I remember coming back, and I remember talking about it with people, just how profound this was, da-da-da-da. And I forget where I was. I was sitting, I was doing something. Maybe I was doing a massage. And it was just like, well, you have a choice now. You can talk about it, or you can do it. I was like, oh. And I realized that by just simply talking about it, I was almost diluting the experience, and that the experience needed to be lived. Another one that popped into my mind, and this I think was when I was in Shavasana at the end of a session of asanas. And again, this was some years ago. And I used to do this ritual every day where I would take all my wants, all my needs, and all my desires, and I would lay them at the feet of divinity. And the picture in my mind was a bluish color, probably because I was looking at pictures of Krishna and Shiva and Ram, etc. And I was doing this, and then then this foot came up and just stamped on all my wants, needs, and desires. And I remember looking up and going, you just stepped on all my wants, needs, and desires. What is that about? And this voice was like, and again, a voice, this impression was, well, I don't really want your wants, needs, and desires. I want you. And then I looked down, and around the foot were just all these flowers. And again, I was like, whoa. And I transitioned from doing that particular daily ritual. And go ahead. And recently I've been doing a very deep dive into the study of the goddess of the Shakti, of Lakshmi, because that's a form that appeals to me. And I've been doing lots of mantra around that. And I've been doing just lots of exploring, lots of singing about it, And I've been in touch with someone who's been helping me. She's kind of been guiding me a little bit, And after this one particular session with her, and I'll keep it relatively short, but it was a very similar experience as the ordination into the priesthood. And the vision of immeasurable love embodied in various forms was alteringly profound. beyond what words can really describe. And, part of that experience was looking out and, looking out at Tom, because he lives right over there, Rachel, Benjamin, looking out at the people I encounter, the trees, the creation, the people. I remember walking through Target, it's the same thing, was just, the ineffable oneness, to use the term Brahman, just encased in everything. And it's just the incredible bliss and peace, because I was free. They were free. We're all free. It was just, and those kinds of, for me, part of what they do is help, because practice, when you're involved in practice, it's practice. I tell people all the time, yoga and yoga practice and meditation and asa, pick one, pick them all, doesn't matter. At a certain level, they're easy, but that doesn't mean it's not hard, or it doesn't mean it's not difficult, if that makes sense. It's just like, you still have to keep putting in that time. And the more you come back into that kind of a vision, the more, and part of those experiences, that we can remember them, we can talk about them. And when we do, it brings a lot of it back. I get very emotional. I'm like, whoa, and I'll probably, in a few minutes, I'll pick up a guitar and I'll start singing again, just because that's an expression for me at this point. And, it keeps me coming back. It keeps me coming back to practicing asana. It keeps me coming back to meditation. It keeps me coming back to chanting and singing and reading. And understanding that everything is an embodiment of Brahman.
I think the aspect of that is difficult for people is that when you're in that state, you're like in a retreat in yourself. It's like an inner retreat, like you're on a quest of some sort, or you're on a retreat. And then you go back to Target and Walmart or wherever it is that, or to driving someplace and having the person in front of you, keeping you from where you want to be on time, or your children, or this or that other circumstance that's listening to politics, or, hearing people arguing, or going to work, or whatever it might be, how to bring that into to take the consciousness part of this, to take that into your daily life, and to have that be a part of your, to incorporate that into your daily life in such a way that it's not just something you do apart from your daily life. I can go sit and meditate all day and be happy. Well, yeah, if you're retired, or if you don't have anything else to do. But at some point you got to go do the other stuff. And so it's how to bring that into the practice then of that level of practice into the practice of your daily life, and to blend that so that you begin to handle those circumstances that are difficult in a more loving way. That's where the practice, that's where the next level of practice is. Let's just put it that way. You're practicing, and then for the occasion when you will use that consciousness or that ability to go into that inner place of peace and calm and love, to apply it into this activity, that is stressful. You know, this situation that's not what you would like to be doing on a daily, your daily life.
Mhm.
Because the earth is a messy place. You know, we've talked about this earlier, that love can be messy, and that love can be difficult, and because it involves things that aren't always easy and pleasant. So we go back to, or we reminisce about, like we're doing now, we're sharing some of our, really, um, in a sense, we're immersing ourselves in some of these good times, you know, in the inner spiritual experiences that were really happy in some sense, but also a revelation. How do you bring that revelation into daily life? And I think that's one of the things about going through all these ceremonies that we did, and going to Sedona and going to Egypt and going through all of these different things on these spiritual journeys. We're still on that spiritual journey. We're still in a retreat. If you see your life as a spiritual journey, and that every moment is sacred and is a part of that practice, uh, it will enliven it to the point where you can say, okay, this is an experience. This is one of those spiritual experiences, and it's just as profound and just as deep and full of meaning as those experiences that you had going into the rock, or into the cave, or when you felt like you were flying, or when you were at the ocean's edge, or at the vortex, or wherever it was. It's just another vortex. It's another journey. When I get up and go and drive to town, or deal with stuff that I have in my work, that sometimes is stressful, I have to remember this is just another another one of those experiences, and what am I doing with it?
Mhm. Totally.
I think that that's completely true. And I think that the practical manifestations are really important. I mean, I think that, you know, I feel like, one of the things with, like that embodiment, right? The embodiment, the embodied experience of love or peace, or the use of a mantra, or the use of a seed sound. We're intoning something, and we're tuning our vibration to the vibration of that mantra. And so, we are emanating that. And it's like that emanation, does have practical follow-ons. I mean, like, you can attract abundance and love, and share that. I mean, people feel that. They feel when you are a loving human being to them. They feel when you look them in the eyes and you see them and you go, oh, beautiful being, I love you. Even if you don't articulate those words, they can feel the energy of that when you are vibrating that, when you are radiating that in the world. So I think those practical experiences are really important. And I also feel like it can be a surrender. It's like, I've been in situations where I was at work and I encountered a woman who was saying things that I felt like were really racist. And I didn't know what to do. I mean, I stood with my mouth agape at this lady, because I just didn't know what to say to her, because I was just absolutely astonished at what she was saying. And, I came to the conclusion, I was like, I don't know what to do with this woman. And I asked for guidance. I was like, I don't know what to do with this woman. What do I do with this woman? I don't like what she's saying. And, the conclusion that I came to was I was going to try to love her. And I didn't know what that meant, but I decided I was going to try and love her. And so that's what I tried to do. I just tried to love her. And I got to know her, and I talked to her, over a long period of time. It wasn't like every single day, but I would see her. I would see her probably at least once a week during this time, see her, and we had small talk, and we talked about the weather. We talked about whatever was going on. And we developed a relationship. And there came, and I did grow to love her. I do love her. And there came a moment when again, she said something that I perceived as very racist. And I was able to say to her, I was able to say my piece. I was able to say, I disagree with that, and this is why. And we were able to have an exchange. It was emotional because it was emotional, but it was different. I was able to say to her my piece, and and then after that day, I was able to go back to her and say to her, as a friend and somebody who does love her and care about her, I was able to say, hey, I want to talk about that again because I felt really uncomfortable. And she said, okay. And we had a conversation, and I learned from her. She told me about her life. She told me about her upbringing. She told me about where she came from and what her experiences were. And I could understand how she could use language that I thought was offensive. And I was able to say to her, like, do you understand that that language has so much energy and charge about it? It's got hate in it. You know, some people receive it as hateful and containing hate. And in some ways it does contain that energy of hate. And she was able to also hear me. So it was this experience of trying to love a person. And what that created was transformation. It transformed me. It allowed communication, and it allowed understanding. And we both walked away, I believe, changed by that experience. I had greater understanding. She had greater understanding, you know, and it was like, wow. And it worked. It was transformational. It took a long time. It took over a year for that to happen, but it did, you know, and I feel like when we, you know, like, just like you said, Tom, when we go into it with consciousness, when we say, I would like to bring peace in the world, or I would like to bring joy in the world, or I would like to bring justice in the world. You know, when we start to ask those questions, when we bring that consciousness to our lives, I think that we have, you know, when we say, I desire this, I'm going to be this thing. I am creating this thing. I am justice. I am peace. I am love. I am joy. Those, when we say that, when we bring that to that commitment to our lives, we have an experience of it. We have an experience of it. And yes, we experience that, but we also share that experience with other people in the world. And we create that in the world. We create joy, love, justice, peace. So you're right. I think you're right. I think that consciousness it permits us to create in the world.
And
Wow.
and as it kind of like what, you know, that experience of the ordination, and I come back and I'm just talking about it, and it was just like, well, so what? Yeah, you have that.
Right.
Okay, you went to the mountaintop. All right, that's cool.
Now what?
Now what?
Yeah.
You know, can you look at the people around you and see them as their expression of the ineffable one?
Wow, what a joy this has been. Thank you. Thanks so much, Rachel, for joining us here too. This is fantastic. And you're right. At the end of it, it was just such a perfect example of the simple yet profound application of the spirituality, you know, you did in terms of just ask for guidance, and it was to love her, right? You know, by the way, I've got a few neighbors that if you wouldn't mind meeting, forming some connections with, no. Yes, that's the anyways, we're at the end of our time here too. So I love this. This is awesome. This was so meaningful to me. And I really appreciate it. And we'll do it again. I've got some ideas. I'll email you for some ideas for maybe next week and beyond. But this was absolutely outstanding. I really appreciate all of your time.
Absolutely.
Yeah,
It's
thank you.
wonderful.
Thank you. It's been a joy. Thanks for creating the space. Thanks for inviting me. Thanks, Tom.
Yeah, we can use a fourth wheel anytime, or a fifth, or a sixth, or
Yes.
18-wheeler. Well, we've been moving on.
Well, and that's going to relate to the idea. And I'll say it right now too, is that I'm going to put this time on the calendar, you know, every Sunday, and, you know, and just, there could be topics at some points and there could not be topics at some point, but yeah, whoever joins, and spread the word, and we'll see what happens. It would just be fantastic to hear stories like this. I think it's just incredible. So we'll see what happens. I'll get your thoughts on that as well. So until next time, thanks everybody. What a pleasure. Yep. Oh, there it is. Oh, good. Yep. Just, yeah. Afraid you were gone.
No.
One more story. One more story. Yeah, she forgot. So, all right, to be continued, but oh, absolutely fabulous. Take care, everybody. Love you. Have a
All
great
right.
one.
Have a good
Bye.
night.
Good night.
Bye-bye.